I had lost pretty much everything, and all I could do was think about like the entire rest of my life. I'm like, oh no, how am I going to do this? And how is this ever going to come together? And even when I first got into recovery and they were like, you can't drink anymore. And I was like, what? Because I was like, but wait, like I'm going to have to go to weddings. I'm going to have to go to parties. And that's just, I have to drink there. And so thinking about everything in the future is enough to shut somebody down and get them back into using again, because it's so scary because you don't have control over it and you don't know what's going to happen. And so just making sure you get through that one day and not super focusing on everything that could happen has been really, really helpful to me.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host, O.
On today's episode of the SHAIR Podcast, we have Erin Bahadur joining us. Now, Erin has this amazing, bubbly personality. She is a recovering addict. She is an NASM certified personal trainer, a blogger, and oh, so much more. You'll find her on Instagram posting these amazing photos of food that coincide with the work she does on her blog. But Erin also has a dark side. Prior to finding recovery, Erin had a horrific experience with drugs and alcohol. Her addiction would bring her in front of a judge multiple times. She served prison time, she's a convicted felon, and had to overcome a mountain of obstacles to get to where she is today. She is truly a miracle and a beacon of hope. I can't wait to jump into her story. I think you're absolutely going to love it. But first, a little SHAIR Podcast news. Okay, guys, another quick reminder that on May 6th, 7th, and 8th of this year, 2016, in Manuel Antonio, Costa Rica, is the International AA Convention here in Costa Rica. So what I've done is on the homepage of the SHAIR Podcast, I have put a banner. Just click on that banner. It sends you right to the page where you can get all the information about the convention, how to register, and about hotel accommodations. I have personally attended this convention about 5 times. I love it. The weather is fantastic, and it's always a good time. So if you have the resources and the time, I'd love to meet you in person. If you can't make it out to Costa Rica, but you live somewhere near Seattle, I will be at the Seattle International Narcotics Anonymous Convention this year, July 29th, 30th, and 31st, 2016. It will be held at the Seattle Airport Marriott. And I will be the main speaker on Friday night opening up the convention. If you go to the SHAIR Podcast website, on the right-hand side of the website, you'll see a banner. It's a blue banner that says SINAC 2016. Click on that banner. It'll send you to the page where you have information about room rates, about registering for the convention. Everything you need to know about attending the convention is right on that website. So again, I would love to meet you guys in person. If you can make it out there, would love to see you. And as always, a big thank you to all of our listeners who sent in their generous donations. The most recent donations were from Stanton, Wendy, Edward, Marla, Ty, Katie, Susie, Brian, and Lewis. Again, the entire amount of your donation goes towards maintaining and growing the show. If you would like to make a donation, just go to the website. On the right-hand side of the page, you'll see a big yellow button, and it says Donate via PayPal. Click on that button. It'll take you right to the donate page. And if you're going to buy something on Amazon anyway, then you might as well go to the SHAIR Podcast, click on the banner that says Amazon, and then make your purchase after you've clicked on that banner. What that will do is anything you purchase on Amazon will kick back a little commission to the SHAIR Podcast. It's not going to cost you a penny more, and it's going to absolutely help support and grow the show. And if you haven't done so yet, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. It's the best way to show your support, and it's the best way for us to rank higher on these search engines and help more people easily find the SHAIR Podcast. And speaking of reviews, let me read a few that I fished out of the review section in iTunes. The first one is from Linda Teague. Love this show. This show is so important. When you are struggling through something as tough as addiction, it is so important to be able to listen to others who have made it to the other side. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. And I couldn't agree more. We need like-minded individuals who have been through exactly the same hell that we have and made it through to the other side. It's so important to hear these stories. The next one is from iFish14. Love this podcast. I love the fact that both addicts and alcoholics are featured on this podcast. I listen on my way to work in the mornings. It helps me prep for the day. Keep it up. Thanks, iFish. Yes, this is a home for addicts and alcoholics, but as far as I'm concerned, alcohol is a drug, and when you can't stop using alcohol, you're addicted to it. So it could be sex, it could be food, it could be shopping, it could be gambling, it could be alcohol. It's a podcast for recovery from addiction. I'm right there with you, iFish. And this last one is from Melissa Daggett. I wish there were more podcasts like this. I've been waiting for a podcast like this for so long. After searching for sobriety podcasts the other day, I fortunately was able to find this one. I've listened to 7 episodes so far, and I absolutely love it. To me, it's like going to a meeting and so inspiring hearing amazing stories. I highly recommend this podcast to anyone in recovery. Melissa, thank you so much. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to host and produce this podcast on a weekly basis. It's such a blessing. And if you're still looking for some other great podcasts to listen to, there's the Recovery Elevator, That Sober Guy, The Bubble Hour, The After Party Pod, and the one I listen to on a regular basis, Rich Roll. It's one of my absolute favorites. So there's a few to check out while you're waiting for the next Tuesday episode of the SHAIR podcast. Melissa, thank you again for that beautiful review. And of course, the SHAIR podcast private accountability group. Again, it is growing like crazy. We're now up to 821 members. And again, the beautiful thing about the private group is that it's a safe place for anyone dealing with an addiction problem to join up and ask for help. Questions like, where's the nearest meeting? Or, I'm thinking about relapsing. What should I do? I'm having using dreams. I'm substituting food for drugs. So these topics will get posted in the group, and the other members will jump right in and give their experience, strength, and hope. So if you haven't joined, it's a lot of fun. It's Facebook. It's free. Get in there, join in, do some service, get some help. It's a great way to support the show. To join the group, just go to the top of the Facebook search bar, type in SHAIR private group, and the SHAIR Podcast Private Accountability Group will pop right up. So for more information about the Costa Rica Convention, the Seattle Convention, the Private Accountability Group, how to donate, or anything else SHAIR related, just go to the website www.theshairpodcast.com or email me at o@theshairpodcast.com and I'll get back to you ASAP. So now let's jump into Erin's story right after a quick message from our sponsors. Sober Nation is the largest online recovery community and treatment resource center. They provide treatment resources to those struggling with addiction, as well as to the family members who are caught in the crossfire. On top of that, Sober Nation is a huge community of good people who share their experience with each other. They have informative content, recovery and addiction news, as well as an entire clothing line which helps expand the culture of recovery. They can easily be found at www.sobernation.com. Sober Nation is putting recovery on the map. And finally, would you like to receive the most popular AA daily devotions free in one distribution? Transitions Daily delivers daily devotions from the 24 hours a day, AA Thought for the Day, Daily Reflections, Big Book Quote, Just for Today, As Bill Sees It, plus more. You can get our distribution daily via email, private Facebook group, or Twitter. Go to dailyaaemails.com for more information. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends in meetings and with sponsees in recovery. Now back to the show. Hey, Erin, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to have you on the show today. How are you feeling?
I am doing great today.
Oh, excellent. So you ready to get started?
I am.
Let's do this.
All right.
All right. So today, folks, we have Erin. I'm going to butcher this. I just saw the last name.
It's Bahadur.
Oh, it's Bahadur, not Bahadur. Okay.
No.
Bahadur. Where is that from?
My husband's Indian.
Ah, okay. All right. Cool.
Yep.
I'm going to leave all that in there right now. Well, and Erin is joining us on the SHAIR podcast today. She is the founder of Erin's Inside Job. Erin is a personal trainer, a fitness instructor, and so much more. So, Erin, let's dive right in.
All right.
Tell us about how your life is today, your hobbies, your exercise. Take us into your normal daily routine, and then also include your recovery.
Okay. So my routine is kind of all over the place. So I don't have like a typical 9 to 5 job. I see a number of personal training clients. So that's like a one-on-one kind of thing. Those schedules can change around a bit. I'll see like 1 or 2 during the day. Some come to me. I go to some other ones. And depending on the day, I will teach some fitness classes. I teach at a place here in Chicago that specializes in like high intensity boot camp classes. So I also go do that. And then in the middle of the day, I spend time on the blog. So developing content, writing that content, taking pictures, answering a lot of emails. And then I think that's pretty much it work-wise. I do also some freelance writing. So depending on if I have anything due for that, I'll get that writing done. And the schedule works out pretty well because a lot of the times that people want to train are either before or after work. So I'll see people either early in the morning or in the evening, and then I'll have that middle chunk of time there to work on the blog development and things like that. And then I do attend some 12-step meetings still. So I do that for my recovery, and it's really only about twice a week right now just because I have those clients in the evening, and that's usually when all the meetings are. So that is about it. I think, that's it.
That sounds very, very full. Lots going on there.
Yeah.
And just to touch on, we were just talking about this prior to the interview, is all the tons and tons of pictures that you take of all your amazing food.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're very active in Instagram too.
Yes, I'm a little obsessed with it right now. Maybe a problem.
I find that everybody that I talk to that gets into Instagram, they're like, you got to get into it. Oh my God, I totally love it. I'm totally addicted. And I go,
yeah.
Wow, this is probably not something I should be looking into.
Well, it's because I develop it now. It's like alongside my blog. So it's like kind of tied into that brand identity. Like if I just had it for myself, I think I would be like, yeah, all right. But like, I tie in the content on the blog with like the pictures, and then like it's a whole social media good time thing.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm probably at some point going to have to get in there. Because it is huge from what I understand.
Yeah. All the cool kids are doing it.
Yeah, that's what I hear. All right. So Erin, tell us a little bit about how you maintain your spiritual condition, that conscious contact with a higher power on a daily basis.
So I could definitely be better about this because I'm always running all around. In the past, what I would do is I would have some time like when I woke up before I started my day, and in the evening before I went to bed, where I would just say like a prayer, just saying like, either in the morning it was like, help me have a good day and be open-minded and all that stuff. And then in the evening, I would kind of run through my day, kind of like a 10th step kind of thing, just so that like I could, like you said, maintain that contact, because otherwise it's easy to just forget, you know what I mean? And just go about my day. And so I was really good about that for like some months, and then that kind of slipped. So I think the way that it works now is that if I ever start to feel like overwhelmed or like obsessive or like things are getting out of control, I've gotten good at realizing that and identifying that. And then it makes me stop and then take a step back and be like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, let me see what's going on here. And then that's when I remember to do things, like turn it over or like stop trying to control things. I take a step back and think about what I actually have control over, which is not really a lot. And so it's just kind of like that wake up kind of call. So it would be good if I could do those things without having my life get a little unmanageable. But right now, that's kind of where we are.
It kind of comes down to the serenity prayer.
Yes.
And in a lot of cases, it's good. It's good to be able to recognize that, give yourself a break. Because so many of us, we fall off track, me included, where, what's that conscience? There's certain times where I am just, absolutely militant about getting up, having my quiet time, doing a little journaling, right? And I get totally on course. And then just one little thing, one day where I miss it, right? And all of a sudden I just became too busy for it again, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So give yourself a break.
Yes.
And just, remind yourself when you're starting to feel off that you can always go back anytime.
Yes. Great advice.
Good message. Good message here. All right. So, Erin, tell us how much clean time you have and when is your anniversary date?
So my clean date is May 20th, 2010. So I have almost 6 years.
That is fantastic. You're coming up on 6 years.
Yeah.
Mine is actually in May as well. Mine is May 26th.
Oh, nice.
So I'm coming up on some an anniversary date.
Congratulations.
Well. Yeah, right?
Almost.
Yeah. You too.
Yeah.
It's lucky number 13 for me. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Yeah.
So let's start talking about back in the day when you were drinking. Tell us how old you were the first time you drank or used drugs, and more importantly, how did they make you feel?
So the first time I drank was, I think, probably when I was in high school, but it was either a junior or senior in high school. I was pretty much a straight A student. I was on the honor roll, and so I wasn't really involved with anything like that. I think I went to like 1 or 2 parties, and those were the only times that I drank. It wasn't until I got to college that things started to get a little out of control. I first tried marijuana when I went to college because I found out that my boyfriend at the time was smoking it. And so we actually almost broke up because I was so against like any kind of drugs or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some friends, who had also smoked it while I was there. And they were like, what's the big deal? Like, it's just some pot. It's not anything. And so then like I saw that, nobody's life was falling apart. No one was dying. So I was like, all right, now, I guess I'll try this because I didn't want to lose the relationship is what it came down to.
Yep.
So I was 18 then when I did that. And once I did that, I realized like it made me feel like I didn't have to worry about anything. I'm I can be a very type A person. And so I would always put myself under so much stress. And then when I drank or when I did drugs, then when I was in college, I didn't have to worry about any of that. And so it was kind of like a relief and like a freedom. And so I think that's how I started to get into that cycle, was just looking for that feeling.
Oh, absolutely. I totally get it. Yeah. Erin, listen, you're warmed up here. I'm just going to, it's time to turn this show over to you. Okay.
Okay.
So it's time for you to share your story, the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and finally your journey into recovery up until today. So Erin, take it away.
All right. So I pretty much started off with that beginning story with high school and with college. Like I said, I was an honor roll student. So like I got good grades. I went to college, and that's when I first tried drugs for the first time. After I got comfortable smoking marijuana, then I was kind of like, oh, well, what other drugs are around here? What other things can I try? And so it was surprisingly easy at my school to get a hold of other drugs. So I tried pretty much everything I could. I think at that time, though, the drugs weren't the huge part of it. It was really the alcohol. I got up to a point where I was drinking like 3 bottles of wine a night. I was drinking every day, but I was still able to show up for class, maintain my GPA. I did lose my scholarship eventually in there, but I finished college in 3 years. So I graduated with my bachelor's degree in psychology.
Wow.
And I came in with a lot of advanced placement credits from high school. So my last year, my 3rd year, I took some extra courses and some summer classes so that way I would be able to graduate early. So I did that. I had my degree in psychology, and then I realized I didn't really want to go to graduate school and be a therapist. And so I was like, now what do I do? While I was in high school, I had gotten a job at a pharmacy. So I worked there throughout my senior year of high school, all throughout college, and I was really good at it. I really enjoyed it. And then I decided that that's what I wanted to go do. I had to go back to college because I majored in psychology. So I didn't take all the science classes I needed to even apply to school for pharmacy. So I ended up going back to school for 2 years. I took all the science classes I needed. I applied.
You're a smart one, huh?
Yeah. I applied and I got in on my first try. That's what makes the story so crazy. So I got in on my first try. And so during this time, like when I went back to school for those 2 years, I was drinking periodically. Nothing was crazy. I had moved back in with my mom for those 2 years. So obviously I couldn't go like off the rails and be drinking every night. And things were kind of okay. They were kind of stable. So once I got into pharmacy school, it was in another county. I grew up in Maryland, so it was in Baltimore. I got accepted to their satellite campus, which was in another city. But that meant pretty much that I just had to stay at home. I had to watch the lectures online because they were taped live in Baltimore. And it was kind of like a distance learning kind of thing. I really only had to go into campus to attend labs and to take actual tests. So I really didn't see a lot of people on a day-to-day basis. I moved into an apartment by myself. I didn't know anybody in this new county. And I think I was kind of freaked out. I had a hard time with emotions. It wasn't until recently that I was able to even like deal with them or understand them. But like growing up, I didn't have really any kind of outlet. I didn't know how to express my emotions. I didn't know how to like talk about them or even really identify them. So when I moved in with myself, I was all alone. I was kind of scared and I didn't know what to do with that. And so I remembered from college the feeling of not having to worry about any of those feelings or not having to worry about any of that stress. And so I started drinking while I was in my apartment. I was by myself now. I was of legal age, so I could buy whatever I wanted to, whenever I wanted to.
Right.
And so I would end up drinking alone in my apartment. And I also was going back down to work at that pharmacy where I grew up periodically. And I started to sample the different pills that they had there. So
wow.
I was taking any kind of pills. So obviously I like school. I like academia. So I justified it as like, well, I need to experience what all of these pills do and how they make me feel as like a learning experience. So I was taking uppers and downers and benzos and just trying everything. And that is when I think I kind of refined my taste in prescription drugs, if you will. So I started taking OxyContin and the oxycodone that they had there. My drug of choice was opiates and alcohol. And nobody knew anything that was going on at all. Like, I was very good at living a double life. My family, my friends didn't know anything. It was especially easy because I was separated by a number of counties. They didn't see me on a regular basis. And it was, I believe, in 2008, during one of those times when I was back home working at the pharmacy, I went out with a friend and we were drinking and I drove home and I got pulled over. And I think I blew like a .23 or something. I was extremely drunk. I would drive home like that on a regular basis, which was completely irresponsible. I had friends who would try to take my keys from me, and then I would eventually get them back and drive home. So I was pulled over because I didn't have a front license plate on my car, which you needed one of those where I lived.
Yep.
And I took that to mean that it wasn't because I was driving poorly. So if I had that front license plate, I never would have gotten in trouble. And this has nothing to do with my drinking because I'm an excellent drunk driver. So I got charged with a DWI, but I didn't really take responsibility for what I had done because, like I said, I justified it as I didn't have a license plate on my car. So I didn't tell my family about this. My mom happened to find out like right before my actual court date. She was not very pleased with me. I went to court. I ended up getting a probation before judgment, which just basically meant I was on unsupervised probation. I didn't really have any consequences except they wanted me to go to like a treatment facility, like attend some number of sessions for alcohol abuse and driving. So
I remember those.
yeah. So my license was also suspended for 90 days, which I did not pay any attention to because I didn't want to take the bus. And so I drove anyway, which is, again, very irresponsible. So I went to these sessions, and that's when I decided that alcohol was too conspicuous and it got me in trouble. It's much harder to hide. So that's when I pretty much switched over to prescription medications, which I was taking from work. Unless I was home alone in my apartment, I wasn't going anywhere and like nobody would see me. Then I would drink all the time. So after that, I think things just started to go worse for me. I got locked into like this cycle of, I had a lot going on with school. So I would have this stress and then I would not know how to handle it. So I would drink or I would take pills and then everything was fine, quote unquote fine. And then I would come out of that and then I would be like, oh no, I haven't studied. I haven't watched any lectures. I'm even more stressed. So what will I do? I'm going to do the same thing again and drink and use pills so I can forget about it. So it was this very cyclical, like downward spiral.
Yeah.
My grades suffered some in school, but they weren't horrible, but they definitely weren't as good as they could have been. So while I was going back, working at the pharmacy, I was building up a tolerance. I had to take more and more of these medications, especially just for the physical dependence part of it, because with the opiates, there's that withdrawal and no one knew what was going on. So I couldn't afford anyone to find out. So I kind of got myself in this position where I couldn't really escape because I didn't want anyone to know. So one day I went home to work at the pharmacy and I went home that night and I got a phone call from the sheriff's office and they told me that the state had done a random inspection of our inventory, which is totally normal. They just pop in sometimes. Yeah. And they said that there was a big discrepancy in the count of some of the medications and would I come in and talk to them about it? And so like my heart sank and I was like, I don't know what to do. So of course I was like, yes, of course I'll come in and talk about it. At this point, prior to that, I was taking like entire bottles of pills. So I had worked my way up from working on the register in high school to now I was an assistant manager. I had keys to the store. I knew how to get around the computer system. So I had been doing this for some time now. And the only way that it would have been discovered probably is through this inspection that we had when I wasn't working there one day. So I went in the next day and I talked to this detective and I tried pointing fingers at everyone. They had a high suspicion that it was me, but they didn't really have any like actual evidence. So before I knew that the police could lie to you, he told me that I would be charged with a misdemeanor if I returned the bottle of pills that was missing because the actual cost to us was like $30 or something. So I would be charged with theft under $100. So I thought that was a great deal. And I was like, oh, okay, yes, I took this bottle. I'm so sorry. Here, you can have it back and I won't get in trouble. So,
oh, no.
I lost my job that day. And then shortly after that, I had a cop pull up. I was staying at my mom's house during that time just because I was home and I was working and I wasn't in school. I think it was a break of some kind. I happened to be home by myself that day, thankfully. And a police officer pulled in and served me with papers that charged me with everything that was missing from the store, which was the actual like counts. It was, I don't know, it was like 10 or more counts. And a couple of them carried like double-digit maximum sentences. And so I was like, I don't know, like what is happening right now.
Get an attorney.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yes. So I called the same attorney that helped me with my DWI.
Oh.
I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't know what to do. Like I physically couldn't reach out for help. I just didn't know how to do it. And so I started to use even more because that's what I do when I get uncomfortable and I don't know how to deal with life and feelings. So I would use more drugs, except now I didn't get them for free. So I had to start buying them because I had lost my job. And I had no money to continue doing that because they are very expensive, or they were very expensive. And I didn't have any income coming in. So eventually it got to a point where I ended up switching to heroin, which is something that I told myself I would never, ever do. Like, I'm better than that. I'm not going to follow that progression, because you hear about it so often. You know what I mean? Like, people can't afford pills anymore. They go to heroin because it's cheaper. And the problem for me was that, again, I still lived in this place where I didn't know anybody. I didn't know where to get heroin. So my favorite show at the time was The Wire. So I said, oh, well, Baltimore has heroin. So I decided that I would drive to Baltimore. I would just randomly drive around. I had no idea where I was going. And I would just find people on the street and I would ask them where I could find drugs.
Oh, my God.
So that is how I got into that. It worked very well. I wouldn't recommend it to other people, but that's what I started doing. And thankfully, nothing bad ever happened to me while I was up there. I actually ended up finding a guy who smoked crack. That was his drug. And so our deal was that I would call him before I came up. I would give him like $10 and he would tell me where we would go to get heroin, and then he would get crack.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was.
This is wild.
Absurd. I know. It was. Yeah, I know. So we would do that. There was a period of time then when I also smoked crack, because I was like, oh, I haven't tried this one. Let me try this one too. I wasn't a big fan, so went back to the heroin. Because I was in pharmacy school, I knew a lot about anatomy and things like that. So along with that knowledge plus the internet, I taught myself how to shoot heroin by myself. So I never used with anyone. It was only me in my apartment by myself. Sometimes it would be in the car on the way home from Baltimore because I couldn't wait. It was like a 2-hour drive. And it's really amazing that I didn't like overdose and die alone in my apartment.
No doubt.
It was crazy. And I don't know, I started selling things that I had, like jewelry, anything that I could think of. I took out cash advances on my credit cards. I asked my mom to borrow some money, and it just really got out of control. I limited the amount of time that I went home so that nobody would know what was really going on. I think my sister probably knew something, but wasn't quite sure, because it's so like atypical. Like, nobody ever expected that of me. And I certainly didn't act like anything was going on. So I think it really just got to a point where I realized I was running out of money and I had no way to get more. And I had these criminal charges looming over me. And so it kind of like, I was really tired of waking up in the morning with that same feeling and like that same dread and not knowing what was going to happen. I just got so tired, just like emotionally and spiritually and definitely physically. And so I knew I had to change something, because like, this is not what my life was supposed to be.
Right.
So I started calling around to rehabs in the area, and I finally reached one, and they told me to come in, but they told me that I had to bring somebody with me because they were going to give me a medication, and in case, you know, I had a reaction or anything, they would have to drive me home. So I told them, I don't have anybody, I'm all by myself. And then I hung up the phone and I was like, oh, okay, great. I don't have to go to rehab. I'm just going to keep doing this. And they called me back, and then they told me to just come anyway. So I think I only had $15 in my bank account, which was just enough money to put gas in my car and get to this place. And so I think I kind of took that as a sign that I think I have to change things now. So that was my clean date. So that was May 20th, 2010, when I stopped. And that sounds all good and great, but now there is more to the story.
It's a roller coaster so far.
Right? I know.
Whoa.
Crazy. So I started going to this intensive outpatient treatment. So I do a couple times a week. They advised that I go to 12-step meetings. I really didn't want to do that, but you know, I realized I didn't really have any other choice. I kind of had to surrender and just go with it. So I was clean for 100 days and I had to go to sentencing. By this point, my family had found out. And what's weird is that I can't remember exactly how they found out. Like, I think I told them, but I can't remember that moment, which may be good, which may be bad. I don't know. They knew about it. They came to the sentencing. I, by this point, had also been kicked out of pharmacy school. So I'd been there for 3 years and I told them what had happened and they held this whole like tribunal thing and I was asked to leave. And then I went to my sentencing. I said goodbye to my dog because I assumed that I would be coming home and I would see her later. And when I got there, I had character witnesses. I was like, I've been clean for 100 days. I don't really have a record. I'm awesome. And I think she kind of used me as an example because in that county where I grew up, prescription drugs were becoming a big problem.
Right.
And so I was sentenced to 12 months in jail, 5 years of probation. I had to pay over $3,000 in restitution and community service.
Wow.
So I pretty much got the book thrown at me.
Yes.
And I was taken from the courtroom immediately. I was kind of in shock. I didn't really know what was happening. My family was crying. It was a really, really awful time. So I went to jail and I was there for 9 months. I ended up serving 9 months because I got off some on good behavior. And I got out and then I didn't really know what to do.
You actually served 9 months in jail?
I served 9 months in jail.
What was that like?
I realized I just kind of glossed over that.
Yeah.
And then I got out.
Going on? Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't very exciting. It was actually kind of a boring time. It definitely opened my eyes to some different people. I was in a small county detention center, so there wasn't really a lot going on. I read a lot of books. I slept a lot. I was obviously not happy that I was there. So
right.
I think there was kind of like some depressive issues there. I would sleep a lot. I was just, kind of trying to make the time go by faster.
Right. Yeah.
But thankfully, I maintained contact with a lot of the people that I had met already in recovery. So like they wrote me letters and I was able to talk to people on the phone. So that really helped a lot. But it was just so limiting and it was not at all what I thought would be part of my life. So thankfully my family all stood by me. They came to visit me every weekend. So that was very helpful. And then, like I said, I got out after 9 months and I went to go live with my sister. And I didn't really know what to do because my only job I had ever had for like 8 years was working in a pharmacy, which I wasn't allowed to do anymore and would probably not have been a good idea for me to do. And so I just tried applying like everywhere I could. I tried like retail jobs and then they found out about my theft record and then I did not get those jobs. So I really just kept going to meetings because that's all that I knew. And I knew that is what kept me clean before I went into jail. So I met up with those old people. I was actually released on May 10th. So I was out in time for my 1 year anniversary. So I was able to celebrate that with all of the original people that I came in with. And that was really, really awesome.
Did they have meetings that you could attend inside prison?
I got upset. I wrote to the warden or whoever it was. There was a lot of preferential treatment to the guys in the jail. I think probably just because there were more of them. And so the guys had pretty regular meetings and it was kind of hit or miss when people would come for the women's meetings. So there were some that I went to, but they weren't very regular. I did have some literature in there. Like when they did have meetings, they gave us some. So I had that to read. That was helpful. That helped keep me like connected to it.
How far are you from the prison now?
Well, now I live in Chicago. So
okay. Very far.
I'm very far. Yeah, very far.
I was thinking that'd be a cool H&I commitment.
Yeah, it definitely would. Yeah, no, but now I am halfway across the country. So I got out. I just continued to go to meetings. And then I met my now husband. I had known him when I got clean. He had a year more than I did. And so I met him. I ended up moving in with him eventually. We were dating. And then I tried every day for like 3 months. I was trying to get a job. It was like a full-time job trying to get a job. And I came across this ad one day that was for a open interview that was conveniently like right across the street from our apartment. So I went one night. I ended up getting the job. They loved me. It was great. They didn't do any background checks, which was also great. After I think about 3 months, they promoted me to an office manager. And so it took like a lot of work and it was really tough. And I finally got a job. And then from there, I changed jobs and I was able to pay back like $20,000 in credit card debt. And I was able to start fixing some of those relationships that I think I had messed up to begin with. And so now I try not to keep it a secret. I think since I'm not working an office job, I can be more free about who I tell about things. I think I was a little guarded before. There wasn't really a reason for it to come up, but I think it's important to speak out about addiction, especially in my case, because I think a lot of people have, a conceptualization that's not necessarily accurate. And so that's why I like to tell my story, because I get those reactions like, what? Like,
Yeah.
Are you serious? I don't.
Seriously.
No, you're not. You're joking. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what I do with my blog. And I've done a number of speaking engagements. I actually, just last year, I spoke twice at this police training convention. One was in Maryland. I flew back to Maryland. And then the other one was actually their national convention. They had me come and speak. And it's funny because I'm still on probation. I get off this May. And I had to get permission to leave the state to go and talk to a bunch of cops about like addiction and things like that. It was just very ironic.
Wild.
Funny. Yeah. And so now I'm trying to maintain that recovery and trying to help other people and let them know that it is possible to come out on the other side of it. And so I think that's pretty much my story.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I can't believe you told it in the amount of time you did, because it's only been like 40 minutes. And
okay.
You did a great job telling like an amazing story in a short amount of time. Like I'm just blown away. I mean, listen, for those of you that see Erin on the webpage, okay, you get an idea of what she looks like. And, for those of you that are driving your car and you don't know what she looked like, she is the cutest, sweetest thing you've ever seen in your life. I mean, it's just almost impossible for me to even believe the story you're telling.
I know. It's great. It's just, really weird.
It's almost, there's a woman who has an amazingly beautiful life, super inspirational.
Yeah.
All the posts are about this amazing food and working out and being positive.
Yeah.
And wow, I'm just like, whew, I can't wait for this one to come out, man.
Right.
You were right. It's a humdinger.
Thanks. I know. Thank you.
Well, goodness gracious, HP, baby.
Yeah.
I don't think I say that enough in some of the interviews, but this one is like HP all the way. It's like, wow. And it's such a beautiful transition to watch you take adversity, to take struggle and absolute just rock bottom moments where you just, and especially when you have a criminal record, it changes everything.
I know.
Because the stigma of being an addict today is almost non-existent. Mm-hmm. Especially in the United States, you can say you're a drug addict and it's just like saying, I'm a car salesman.
Right.
Actually, I think they'd rather deal with a drug addict than a car salesman.
You're probably right.
Absolutely. Right. I think there's other countries that still have a social stigma attached to it, but not in the U.S. And I think on the internet and globally, it certainly is not. So coming out and saying that you are, but having a criminal record is a whole different ball of wax. So you have these two opposing or these negatives, that you have to persevere, and you've done just a magnificent job of it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Thank you. I think that's interesting that you said that there's not that much of a stigma, because I like to, when I say that I like to talk about it, I say it in terms of and breaking the stigma and whatever. But I think you're right, because, I've told a number of people and they're never like, oh, get away from me. I don't want to talk to you. So I think what I'm actually trying to do is trying to more educate, I guess, about addiction, because there's still if people say or talk about addicts, you still think sometimes about, what they portray in the movies or something like that. You don't necessarily think of an honor roll student, who wasn't abused or, something like that. It is like a disease, and I'm a normal person, and I don't think you always think that. So I think I just like to raise awareness that it can happen to anyone.
Yeah, but it's not a one-time thing. Just because right now, I would say for the most part, in many cases, the stigma is broken. We have to continue that, because the minute we stop talking about it, it goes back into the closet.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And especially somebody like yourself, if you were to say, I spent time in prison, I was addicted to Oxycontin, right, and heroin, and somebody is staring at you, they're going to be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's doing. I'm looking at you. I'm not that person anymore. I have persevered, and anybody can do this. And here's the most important thing. This is where the most important part of breaking the stigma is that if there is someone that needs help, if there is someone, I recently had one of my closest friends that I've known for 15 years. Her son is a heroin addict in the streets. And she finally just called me and says, I need your help. I need your help. I don't know what to do. And of course, she knows I know exactly what to do and who to call. But if I'm hiding behind the veil of anonymity, who does she call? Right. So what we're doing right now is we're saving lives, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that's why I never really understood that, because for me, a lot of what made me continue to use was this secret life that I had, was this double life and all the secrets. And so if I do that with what I've gone through, then it doesn't help anybody. It's much easier for me to go back into not knowing how to cope with things and not knowing how to reach out to people. And then soon enough, I'm sure I'll be drinking and drugging again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think all of this, I can't even express to you what doing this podcast has done for my recovery. It's just catapulted it to another level. And my level of gratitude is also, I'm humbled by the emails and the support and the messages that I get. I mean, I can't imagine living my life any other way. And, just based on, I want to segue. I want to talk about Erin's inside job.
Yeah.
Because I want to know how you've used this also to fortify your recovery, especially in the diet and the exercise. Tell us about how that's incorporated in your recovery.
Okay. So about almost 2.5 years ago is when I started it. And I started it because I was following a number of other blogs online. And, some of them had overcome eating disorders or just had some kind of personal struggle that they had overcome. And then that's what prompted them to start writing their blog. So then I thought, oh, hey, I've done something sort of like that. Maybe I can help other people as well.
Right.
So it also came because it wasn't solely just because of my recovery from the addiction or from the drugs, that is. Because even after I was clean for probably a little over a year, and my addiction came up. It manifested itself in other ways that weren't drugs and they weren't alcohol. And for me, they were food and they were fitness. And I was in a relationship. I was happy. I stopped going to quite as many meetings. And pretty soon I started to control or have the need to control my exercise and my food. it was just another way for me to deal with feelings that I had, to deal with life, because I still at this point wasn't like a terribly emotionally healthy person. And so I started running. And then I said, I was like sad on the inside. That, there's like that hole that you want to fill with things. And so I was like, I'm going to make myself look perfect and then I will be happy. And so for me, that translated into exercising a lot, which I had done before when I was in active addiction. I had also had like a brief period of that. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to run. I started and it started very slowly, so it was hard for me to notice it. I started a separate Google calendar where I would track my runs, like my distance and my pace. And it always had to be like a little bit faster, a little bit further. And I would get upset when I wasn't able to go work out. The gym where we joined had a cardio cinema. So it was basically this giant room that had a movie screen, and it was dark in there, and it was filled with like bikes and treadmills and ellipticals. It was amazing. And I would go in there. So I'd be in there for like 2 hours at a time because I would watch a movie and I would just run the whole time. And so eventually I ended up running like 2 12-mile days, like back to back. And I like didn't rest, and I got a stress fracture of my leg, and I like couldn't put weight on it. And I physically couldn't run for like 2 weeks. And so that kind of freaked me out. Yep. And it was during that same time with all of the running and the exercising that I started to eat like super healthy, clean eating all the time. I can't have any desserts. I would make myself feel bad afterwards if I did. It was just like very obsessive. And I think it got to a point where like it got to be nighttime, like before I would go to bed, and I would feel like legitimately sad that I couldn't have a snack before I went to bed. Like, oh, I can't eat anymore tonight. That makes me feel really sad. And I was like, this is not normal. So I went back to some meetings. I reached out to people, and it's just like they say, like just talking about it, like the secrets die in the light kind of thing.
Yes.
Once I opened my mouth, I realized how like insane I sounded. And I was like, I think I need to like get this under control. And so just by like talking to people and getting suggestions and really just talking about it made me realize what I was doing and like that I couldn't keep doing this. And so that helped me get back into more normal behaviors, and I upped my meeting attendance again. And so like that's one thing that definitely did not make me doubt that I was an addict, because like the drugs and everything is just a symptom, so I had it manifest in all these different ways. So anyway, little segue on that. That was another reason why I wanted to start this blog, because I was so convinced that I could make myself look a certain way and then I would be happy. And I found out that like the closer I got to that supposed goal, the more unhappy I was. And so like my tagline for the site is that wellness comes from within. So it's really about finding that happiness from the inside, and then that will be shown on the outside. So it's not about fixing the outside first to make the inside better.
Right. And so the inside job that you did, you shared with other people. Who did you share it with?
So at first it was just my family, and I just said, hey guys, I'm writing this blog. The pictures were awful. It was just kind of like, I don't know. I wrote like, this is why I'm starting this. And then I decided I wanted to kind of just talk about being healthy and fitnessing. I wanted to talk about running because I was still really into that, although I was very careful about how much I did and what my thought process was around it. And once I started writing, it was just like bleh on the keyboard. It was just, I wanted to write like 5 posts a day because I felt like I had so much to say. When I was younger, I wanted to be an author, so I've always loved writing. It's been an amazing outlet for me, and I think I had lost that. And so starting this up, I just kind of wanted to reach out to people, and I wasn't on a lot of social media yet. And so for the beginning, it was just like my very close friends and family, and they were like, oh, this is cute. Yeah, that's great. They're like, why are you doing this? I was like, it helps.
Yeah.
So it also helped me like get things out. It helped me process things because I wasn't very good verbally with my feelings, my emotions, all that stuff. I was much better like on paper or on the keyboard. So I would write it out and then I would kind of put it out there. It turned into like, you know, like cool, healthy snacks that I found, or like, hey, I made this meal and it was really good. And then I can't even remember how it started to get like, people started to find it. And I was like, oh, it's not just my mom commenting, you know, or something like that. And then I went to like some blogging conferences. I met other like healthy living bloggers. And so I made these contacts, and then it's just kind of grown from there.
So as far as, because I want to steer back into recovery,
Yes,
as far as you're feeling bad, okay? Mm-hmm. So before you got really deep into the blog, what it sounds like to me is that you talked about it a little bit and then you just started writing just feverishly. Yeah. And that's what got you out of your funk. Is that what I'm starting to understand here?
Yeah, I would say so. I think I came out of the funk a little while before that just by upping the amount of meetings that I went to and just actually talking to people in my network.
That's where I was getting to.
Yeah. So actually just like...
There it is.
Yeah, there we go. Just actually like talking to other human beings, because my thought process is not always the best, even though I think that I know everything. So it would be like bouncing ideas off of other people. Like if I had said to somebody like, hey, do you think it's a good idea that I keep this Google Calendar with obsessively tracking all of these numbers? They'd be like, maybe not. But I didn't do that. So you got a little crazy.
Okay, so you went to meetings and you started sharing about it.
Yes.
Okay, and since we're all crazy, then everybody's like, I get it. Yeah, I understand, of course. So there's no judgment, first and foremost. Right. And then it's about, as soon as you start sharing about it and you realize just how obsessive you've become, it just immediately starts to change and shift.
Yeah, it definitely lessened. Once I actually like heard myself say these things that I was doing, I was like, oh, that's not normal.
Yeah, I'm sure you talked to your sponsor about all this,
yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was her reaction to all this?
I mean, it was the same kind of thing. I think it's when somebody just kind of like parrots back to you what you just said, and then you can hear them say it too. You're like, oh.
It's beautiful. Here's the thing. It's not difficult. It's not hard. This is a very simple program for very complicated people. We totally want to complicate these things, and alone we are dead meat.
Yes. I mean, that's one of my biggest defects is my sponsor like wrote it in caps on my step work one time. It's like over intellectualization. It's like I have to think about everything, and I'm like, but what about this and what about that?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, just let it be.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, based on what I see on your Facebook page, you certainly found a balance, because there's definitely not a strictness in your food policy anymore.
No, there is not.
I've seen some, again, the other day we were just talking about your ordering a burger with mac and cheese, and then you just poured the mac and cheese onto your burger.
Yep. I mean, I figured I was going to eat both of them anyway, so I would just make it easier.
How did that taste?
It was delicious.
Yes.
It was amazing. Yeah. It's really good.
It looked like heaven on earth.
Yeah. It was really good.
Oh, man. I love it. Oh, Erin, you have one of the most amazing stories.
Thank you.
I have heard, and I've heard a lot.
I bet. Yeah.
Yes. But I got to tell you, there's so many things that coincide. Well, I don't know if the words coincide, but there's so many things that kind of, coincide at the same time that you're listening to your story. First, it's like looking at you and your voice, and then the story, which none of it goes together, right?
Yeah, I know.
And it just blows my mind. You tell your story so well. I hope that you are sharing your story on a regular basis, because it's a very impactful, very inspirational story.
Yeah, it's really one of my favorite things to do. I love sharing it. And so I try to I had a lot more opportunities when I was on the East Coast, because that sheriff's office obviously knew me and things like that. I had contacts there, and then I moved out here. And so I don't really know anybody out here in Chicago. So I've been emailing people. I may actually go speak in Wisconsin, because that same police training, they have different chapters in different states. So when I was at the national conference, the one from Wisconsin said they might have me come out and speak this year. So I love doing it. I think it's great.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. I love it. This is, Absolutely. The most exciting thing that I do is share my message, share my story. And, it's such a life-changing opportunity for you and for the people that you come across because, your life is so different today that there's so many times where people, they look at me and they're like, dude, well, of course you're so happy. I mean, look at your life and you're married and look at your wife and you drive a new car and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm coming up on like 13 years. You know what I mean?
Right.
That didn't happen in the first year.
Right. No,
didn't happen in the first 5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So easy does it.
Yeah. It takes work. It does. And I don't know. It's important for me because I look at it like I went through all of that for something. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to go through all of that and then just pretend that it never happened or just, I don't know, just carry on my life. It's like I have to find a way to use that because it's like so bizarre and like out of control. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. All right, Erin, we could do this for 2 more hours, but we're not going to.
Okay.
So let's wind down.
All right.
And I like to do that for the newcomers. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your early recovery, and I want you to respond with inspiring and insightful answers you can share with our newcomers. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, no pressure.
You're kicking ass.
Right.
All right. Number 1, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
I was not ready to stop. I had not hit my bottom. So when I was first introduced to those alcohol classes, I was nowhere near ready to stop. I had to keep going.
Yep. I
had to lose everything. Yeah.
Sad but true.
Yep.
And number 2, at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
I think it happened for me pretty early because I'm a pretty smart person, rational person. And for me, I knew what I was like when I drank or when I did drugs. I knew that obsession and compulsion. And so I knew that I couldn't think my way out of it like I could a lot of other things. And so I pretty much knew I was powerless because as soon as that thought entered my head, I had to do it. Like I had no control over it. And so I think one of the first, there was a spiritual kind of moment while I was in jail. While I was in jail, I was asked to leave jail to share my story because they had a forum on prescription drug abuse in my county.
Whoa.
So they wanted me to come talk about it. And it happened to be on exactly like my 5-month clean date. Well, you may not know because you have been to jail, but they give out they'll have a religious person come around and give out little daily meditation books or something. So I would usually read them and I'd be like, nah, whatever. But the one on that day had something about speaking and sharing your message with the people, to have other people hear it or something. And I was like, this is just too weird. This is not a coincidence. And so that's the one that sticks out the most in my head. But pretty much from the beginning when I got in recovery, I knew I had no control over it.
Wow, that's absolutely
it was really
awesome. There are no coincidences.
I know, right?
And Erin, do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to a newcomer that you read in early recovery?
I think pretty much the just 12-step literature was really enlightening because it allowed me to identify and, everything that I read, I was like, oh, that's me. And so I think that's really what opened my eyes. So any kind of basic text, anything like that.
And what about currently? Do you have any favorite books that you're currently into these days?
I'm trying to think. I read a lot of books about codependency and about childhood, things like that. I can't think of any specifically, but I was doing a lot of work on my inner child and learning how to be my own person and express feelings since, I have a great time with that. So I can't think of one specifically, but there were a lot about that. Got it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And number 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Let's see. I can't think of an exact suggestion, but a saying is that it's progress, not perfection, is something that I continuously have to remind myself, because I've been so hard on myself for not being perfect, which is absurd because that is completely unattainable. But for some reason, I thought that I could always like get there. And so just if I'm doing like a little bit better each day, that is A-okay.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thanks.
And if you could give our newcomers only one suggestion, what would that be?
I think probably to take it a day at a time. Because when I got out, I had lost pretty much everything, and all I could do was think about like the entire rest of my life. You know, I'm like, oh no, how am I going to do this? And how is this ever going to come together? And even when I first got into recovery and they were like, you can't drink anymore. And I was like, what? Because I was like, but wait, like I'm going to have to go to weddings. I'm going to have to go to parties. And that's just, I have to drink there. And so thinking about everything in the future is enough to shut somebody down and get them back into using again, because it's so scary, because you don't have control over it and you don't know what's going to happen. And so just making sure you get through that one day and not super focusing on everything that could happen has been really, really helpful to me.
Just for today.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. Great suggestions, Erin. Thank you so much again for joining us.
You are welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
God, what a great story. I loved
Thanks.
it. It was a lot of fun. All right, folks, we have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida, oh.
Thank you for joining us on the Share Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview, or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.thesharepodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole.